On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk about reassessing work from home and Lightapalooza. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 314. You're an asset.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Bob Archer. He is the senior editor at CE Pro. How you doing, Bob?
Great. And yourself, Matt?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for being here, my friend. Then we have Mr. Richard Fregosa. You know him as Uncle Richie. He is the principal at Fregosa Design. How you doing, Richie?
Mellow West Coast greetings. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Freezing here. Glad about that.
It's freezing there?
Is not.
I was going to say, it's beautiful up here. It's 20, 22 degrees Fahrenheit, blue skies. It's a bluebird day, my friend. I went out the other day. It was, I went skiing by myself for an hour and a half, and it was 5 degrees, felt like -3. Glorious. I was in my happy place. I thought of you the whole time. Bob knows what I'm talking about. All right, gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro and Dan Farcy. Is it time to reassess the work from home and hybrid work movement? This is a wonderful article from our friend Dan going through a lot of aspects of work from home and what it's going to look like in the future, as well as the hybrid aspect. He has a great conversation with Rachel Rouse, who's the director of interior for the Dallas office and the principal at HOK. Bob, I want to start with you on this, and definitely go read this article. I don't often or always tell you to go read the stinking article, but go read this one because it covers a lot that hasn't been approached in this manner before. But what I wanted to talk to you about, Bob, was as you read this, as you look through this, and as you look across kind of the landscape of what the model of work looks like right now. Obviously, there's a whole group of working people who don't have the option to work from home. But for the portion that do, right, we're really stuck in a weird expanse right now where there are people that want to continue to work from home. There are people that want a hybrid option. They want to go in 2 days a week. There's a lot of people that want to get just thinking back to, I don't want to say back to normal, but they want to get back to that routine of waking up, having breakfast, getting a coffee, going to the office, and then coming home. And they want to get back to that. And then there's the whole aspect of management that may want some form or fashion of any or all of those situations. What's the divide here, and what role, if any, does our industry actually play in this?
Realistically, I don't think we have a big say in what's going to happen, but I do think that if we step up as an industry and let corporate America know that we can support their employees work from home in either a hybrid model or a full-time work from home gig, that we can support them with the tools necessary to work efficiently, including, network gear, cameras, microphones, secure systems, anything that they need to work from home and work from home effectively. I do think, my opinion is that I think going forward, we're going to see most businesses who have employees in the office that are capable of working from home, they're going to be on some kind of hybrid program simply because of the cost of corporate real estate that in the commercial real estate market, these companies can downsize, have smaller offices because their employees are working from home, so they can save a couple of bucks versus what they were spending, as few as 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Richie, one of the other aspects of the article here is talking about kind of the juxtaposition between, as we're going back to the office, that a lot of workplaces are looking for a better aesthetic and, dare I say, more effective tech, right? They seem to be trying to find a way to have a much cooler office space, but with tech that works and is effective and easy to use, which I would argue that all three of us on this call have felt that we've been at that point for a while, that we have effective, easy to use tech, but you yourself, I can guarantee, have wonderful examples of really easy to use systems that still can't be used effectively by staff. What does it take to get there? And is it just is it a pass off between design, tech, and productivity? Do we have to just choose one?
A lot of the times when you see that when they're talking to these businesses and they're talking to, HR managers or C-level executives, they're painted into a corner of saying, we have no idea what we're doing. Because they're stuck. They're stuck. And so they have to decide whether the market is going to lead them to how they work or whether they lead the market. Of course, they want to lead the way.
Yes.
But they can't. It's out of their control. And the hard part is, for the longest time, work from home. And this is somebody who's had a home office for, about 25 years now. Working home office, that I'm more effective out here than I am, in the field or in meetings or anything else. But the longest time, companies, their story was, well, there's no data that shows that work from home is effective. There's no data that says you can get the work done remotely, as opposed to, well, there's data now. And so the narrative is no longer, well, we don't know if you're going to be effective. We don't know if you're going to screw off. We don't know if you're going to be, now it's going to be well, now you're not making the human connection. There was a pivot, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how to control their assets, because that's what employees are, right? Their assets. So when you get the employees in your controlled environment, whether they want to admit it or not, they're not necessarily always worried about the output, right? Not the outcome. They like the how. Well, we want to see how this works, right? We've got a management team and managers who have 30 people to report. How are we going to assess their metrics? How are we going to assess when people show up on time or not on time or miss? It's an antiquated approach to the workplace that has been accelerated through forces outside of the normal business environment. And businesses are catching up, and they don't quite know what to do, but they don't want to admit that they don't quite know what to do. And so the grumblings now are, well, how do we make it more of a human experience, right? The telepresence, right? How do we make it so that a meeting is a meeting and you feel like you're there?
The metaverse. That's the answer.
Which is their way of saying, okay, we're going to call you in for a 4-hour mind-numbing, quarterly meeting, but you're going to get a whole lot out of it more because you're there. And we could see that you're taking notes, as opposed to, no, we found ways for us to be effective. And it's tough because it feels to me, again, and Bob makes a good point. Commercial real estate's expensive. However, there are still many companies, because the CEOs and the executive management of those people have been doing it a certain way for 30 years since they've been appointed. And their predecessor did it this way, and their predecessor did it that way. They don't want to be the first ones to buck the tradition. So, to save face as a company, they rush to get everybody back to keep how things were. Let's say you're a public company, right? It's perception. If you're showing that you've returned to business as normal, well, what's the easiest way to do that? Have bodies inside and sitting in cubicles and working their way through. But that doesn't mean their business is doing any better. It just means it looks that they're presenting a return to normalcy. The one thing that, we constantly talk about these things, and nobody likes talking about it because we've been at it for 2 years, but all of these companies already have their unwritten what happens if we get shut down again game plan. Every single one of them. Because to think that, let's put it this way, if a company doesn't have one, that's going to be rough. Because we're hoping that we don't have something as drastic as previously. But now that it's been done once, right, the seal has been broken.
Yeah.
Right? So once that seal has been broken and it's occurred that as a way to aid the public health conversation, regardless of what side you are on it or not, but, if a decision is made in the interest of public health, the businesses have to have game plans and contingencies built in. But they don't want to spend money. They don't think they have to. So, that's the rough part, is that you don't want to plan for worst case because of how it looks. You don't want to go back to how it was because there are some savings, but you have to change a whole lot of mindsets over it and how you treat your employees. That's how it comes down to, honestly, is like, how do you want to treat your employees? Companies that are being successful are looking at their employees as human beings with families and children and all of these things that they never had to admit before, right? They never had to acknowledge it because your personal life was your personal life and your work was your work life. And once you left their building, they could be less empathetic to your personal life because you were the asset coming in and out. Now that you're asking them, now that you as a business are coming into your employee's home, a lot of that leverage starts going away.
Yeah.
and so it's interesting because, they're tough decisions all around because it's definitely changed. The question is, I think what's going to happen now is it's just going to scatter. And employees are going to have the ability to say, well, no, I want this company that's a work from home.
It's an interesting topic right now, simply because, from what I've read, a lot of younger people out there are really pushing for work from home and hybrid work environments. And you might get this old staunchy CEO who might say and be adamant, oh, I want my guys in the office, and the younger people might be pushing back. It could be work from home and hybrid work office places could become a selling point to attract younger talent into these businesses. And it could really hurt some of these older companies that kind of set in their ways.
It was either Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs famously, like 6 months ago, did if you want to get New York paid, you need to show up to the stinking office. He didn't use stinking, but this is my show, and it's me, so that's what happens. Let me ask you a completely side question to this. We know that there are 3 documented learning styles, right? Rich, you should get this because of your wife's work in education. We know that there are 3 different learning styles, that every child is one of 3, essentially. And that is how you learn best. Are we going to start to see a push to determine who is effective on the workforce in their different working style? And will that come into play?
If they can't attract quality employees, yes.
All right.
I think that Bob brought up a great point, which is you have let's just talk corporate America. Let's not talk small businesses. Let's just talk corporate America.
And I realize this is a Resi show, but I like this conversation, so we're doing it.
People in Resi are going to be working in these businesses, right?
Exactly.
So they all, it all comes down to these are going to be the employees of these corporations who are going to be buying the goods that we're trying to provide.
Yep.
That's kind of how I'm putting those dots together.
I'm with you.
And it ties into the next part, which is that you have a generation of business leaders. Let's just say they're my generation, a little bit older, maybe the generation past me. But you're talking 50 to 70-year-old men great percentage of them.
Yep.
Who had a way of doing things, and just like you said, Morgan Stanley's a perfect example, right? This is the way we do it. This is how we've made our money. Kick rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who went through business school up until recently was faced with, okay, you want to go to a big five? This is what you got to do. You got to pay your dues. You got to do this. You got to do that, right? You get to go through the meat grinder. And Bob made a perfect point. This new generation of workers coming through, and not even from four-year schools, entering the workplace, who have an entrepreneurial mindset, who have access to side hustles in a different way and business models in a different way, who are coming in, and these new employees are coming in saying, no, this is absolutely about my mental well-being, about my quality of life. And it was funny, I was reading something the other day, the stigma of job hopping is gone.
Yeah.
That is a remnant of my generation, right? Where if you had holes in your resume, or if it showed you going from place to place, that was a black mark on you. That no longer applies. This generation coming in goes, I don't care. I was constantly looking for the next opportunity. And so I'm not going to be up to these businesses partially. I think it's going to be, that decision is going to be made for them because of their employment pool.
And I think we have to remember that your generation, you went to school, you did homework at home, you sat at the kitchen table, right? Or your room and your desk, and you did your homework, and you did your schooling, and you went to university, and you sat in the library, and you did your work. The generation that's coming up, and even a large part of my generation, they worked at Starbucks and at the park and wherever they stinking felt like sitting for the day. They sat and did, or for 10 minutes, sat and did whatever they wanted. They're predisposed to flexibility in how they accomplish a task. Not necessarily work, but how they accomplish a task. And I think that's a huge aspect that is dramatically overlooked. All right, before we get totally lost in that, let's switch topics for a moment. This comes to us from Residential Systems. HTSA has announced Lightapalooza 2022. It's their educational conference focused on lighting integration. It's going to go down in the end of February in Dallas. It's a 3-day educational event to connect top integrators with 17 leading lighting segment manufacturers to connect and share ideas one-on-one, engaging conversations, etc., etc., etc. Bob, let me start with you on this. And I believe they tried to do this last year and they had to cancel it. So it's going to be arguably a kickoff from the one that they tried to do last year. We're seeing such a strong push into lighting. Is this just the next shiny thing that a couple of integrators have figured out they can make a little bit of money at and add another, like, we also do this? Or is this a serious category for us as integrators?
I think it's a serious category. ProSource has been doing this for a few years now, and they have their big open house down in Dallas, I believe it is. And they've been doing lighting training for a couple of years now. And I believe, having attended the ProSource event in 2020, right before everything had closed down, they had said that it was, lighting represents like a $44 billion.
It's massive.
It's massive. And their hope is that we're able, as the integration industry, is to get a small piece of that, which is, tens of millions of dollars. Yeah. And so, based on those numbers alone, you'd have to say that, no, this isn't a fad. This is going to be a long-term thing. And based on what I see, at CDR and through my employer, Emerald, I don't see it going away because it ties together so many industries, the design industry, the building industry, and it's a great way for integrators to network with these other industries and not only do lighting, but other systems as well, AV, networking, the whole ball of wax.
So I'm not going to throw you under the bus necessarily, but I'm going to ask Richie a question to kind of counterpoint your statement there. Walking into a project where an electrician's on site, and yes, it's a huge market, there's lots of opportunity, and to show up and say, I know you spec'd a bunch of stuff, but here's what we're going to do, doesn't always make friends, doesn't let you connect. What I wonder and what I question is, for the average integrator, what are we actually bringing to the table when we come to a lighting conversation? Are we bringing, like, obviously there's an integration side, but we've been integrating with lights from a control standpoint for years. What are we bringing to the conversation when we start talking about lighting design and lighting fixtures? Anything?
So,
that was the heaviest that we've had on this show in months.
artistry and my craftsmanship, and my secret sauce, and we always stop when we have the first conversation, which is, you're in the construction industry. First, the minute you're in a house, you're in the construction industry. As such, you need to play with all the other kids in the park nicely. Now, integration has been an interesting word, because for 30 years, it was only a word that was used for a select number of individuals. We may have been doing integration for decades, but it was for a small percentage of people who understood it. If you went to somebody on the street and said, yeah, I do integrations. Oh, you do irrigation. How cool.
I got a question about my flower pot water.
Start working over here. Can you come on by? It is different now. And part of it has become because of the DIY movement, because of what you see in a box retailer, because of what you see in, a Lowe's or a Home Depot. So the integration side of things that the CI channel brings is, I know that your electrician specified this. You need light. However, you keep seeing all of these commercials, or you hear about things, or you see these ads on the internet, about Agatha, turn on my lights to pink, Agatha, turn it on to yellow, right? These are things you're asking for. What Tom, and again, Tom Doherty is a big part of this too. He's one of the OGs, right? We started when we were all mad scientists. And so their approach is, you need to learn this, number one. And that's part of what they're saying, is that this is about education. Okay. This is not a ready, fire, aim situation. And that's speaking to exactly what you're talking about, right? Is they're not saying go half-cocked into a house and just try to rush over everybody. Learn where your niche is, right? Where those riches and niches are. Learn where your niche can be. Where I see it is that if you are using app control, voice control, you name it, system XYZ as the tip of the spear to get into the house, you need to know something like a fixture where all of a sudden it's like you get the call. I had this problem in my house with the fixture a couple of months ago. You get the call from the client. My lights never turn off. Yeah. But my lights never turn off. Yeah. Because there's still enough voltage, even though it's teeny tiny.
Last week.
Keep it on.
Yep.
Well,
did the same thing last week.
Right. Well, nobody told me that. You're right. That's why I'm here. Now, we want to work in partnership with your electrician. So this is why we specify things. It's not that we want to do electrical. We just want to make sure that you're not spending money twice. So we work in partnership. Now, that's what a smart integrator does. And that's what HTSA is trying to say, which is we want to leverage you to get a taste of this business and hopefully not, upset everybody while you're doing it as an advocate, taking the step back. Here's the result. Here are all the things that you've been sold about what the future means. Well, based on this fixture, it ain't happening. Now we got a choice. I can sit there and say, I told you so, and charge you twice, or I can come in and say, we have solutions, and we'd like to work with you and your team on it. And the electrician's going to go, okay, cool. I don't got to sit there and complain about it, right? It's a tough one, but it comes now from the fact that there is a much larger pool.
Mm-hmm.
Your sales figures may not be as high on a project. So you may have 3 or 4 clients who are at a lower cost of entry. That's why it's super important to be able to come in accurately and sell it, because again, your margins are different in this industry. And so, again, I fully expect Shadapalooza 2023 to happen. I fully expect, Irrigation Palooza 2024 to happen. But what this lighting is low-hanging fruit in the sense that you can very quickly and cost effectively reach a desired result with your product mix that you already have. Obviously, if you're in this industry, you're either selling a simple remote control, RTI, a URC, whatever it is, right? There's layer 1. Guess what? There's integration controls in those things now. You move up to the next step. You got Control 4, your Crestron, Savant, who have you. There's another layer in. But it all still comes back to, you can have the most phenomenal control system there, but if that light don't turn off, it ain't your fault, but it's still your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I see this as a way to say, hey, look, how many integrators know that you have a minimum threshold of voltage, that 0 doesn't mean 0. Yeah. If you think 0 means 0, that's not how it works. That's not how electricity works. It's, that's killing a circuit. Oh yeah, it'll turn off, throw the breaker. Residual voltage.
I think it's important for integrators to use these support services that these buying groups are offering. Any integrator could buy lighting product at this point and throw it up and be like that electrician throwing in-wall speakers around everywhere and saying, oh, I do home theater. Well, it's almost the same, but these buying groups are offering support services to help integrators with the design and specification of lighting products. So, homeowners can get the right products to do the right application and meet their needs. So it is a long-term answer.
I'm going to echo that, and we'll wrap it with this. And this is my soapbox PSA moment. If you want to play in lighting beyond controllable, dimmers, right? You want to play with fixtures, go take some buying group courses, go take some CEDIA courses, go take an ALA course, an American Lighting Institute course. Go get your little butt certified and understand the principles of light and the principles of design. Because one of the easiest ways to prove your worth in this is to have more knowledge than those other people on the floor that you're talking to. You don't have to throw it in their face, but if you can understand why you're putting a light there and what that light's going to look like before you sell it, that is very easy to prove to your client and show your client what you're doing and why you're doing it and why you're speccing something that, according to the electrical world, we got the same thing for $9. There's a ton of money to be made in that vertical, but only if you know what you're doing. So go actually learn, please, for the love of God, because I'm tired of pulling your stuff out. Not that I've ever done that before, like last week. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Bob, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro, follow you on Twitter at BobArcher2020. Where else can they reach you?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, normally I bumble through my Twitter account, but I did a few months ago join Instagram, and on Instagram, it's BA as in BA1, the number 1 Boston. So BA1 Boston on Instagram.
I'm going to add that to your thing for me.
And I remembered it.
I love it. I love it. Mr. Fregosa, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Fregosa Design, where can they do that?
Bob, can I say I am just so glad that you didn't post your OnlyFans account when given that opportunity.
That's only for my close friends.
Please don't search that. I don't know what you're going to find.
Now, as far as mine,
I don't want yours either. I don't want anybody's. Stop it.
If you'd like to see my business dealings, you can find me on Twitter at @rfregosa. You can type my name into the interwebs, and business stuff will show up. You can see us at the website, fregosadesign.com. Hopefully, the place you find me the most, or at least the most enthusiastically, is here on AVNation.tv. with our suite of shows serving all these verticals. And actually going to be recording tomorrow with my good friend Steve Greenblatt. Our show is Data Control, which talks about the state of the integration and automation industry as it affects all of us.
Beautiful. Thank you both again for joining us. Thank you for tuning in and listening or watching. If you'd like to connect with me, send me hate mail over something. You can do that at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and most of the other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.